Hi, this is Deanna Dewell from Heel in Motion PT, and you're watching my YouTube channel with Heal Yourself videos. So it's a new playlist I have, and I'm trying to help you during the COVID kind of crisis time to strategize. This particular episode is on plantar fasciitis. So I know a lot of people are out walking more than they ever have before. I did do a previous episode on gait, so perhaps that would have helped you find out maybe what is not ideal and how you can do a little bit different kind of gait pattern to get more out of your walks and less pain. This is another thing that might be coming up. So again, these are my really professional and backwards, I noticed, logos there. Heal Yourself by Heel in Motion PT. We did balance episode 1, posture episode 2, gait episode 3, and now we're on plantar fasciitis. So itis, again, I know this is all backwards, but this is how we got to do it because I don't have an editor. Itis is inflammation. Plantar is bottom, the bottom of your foot, right? The plantar surface of your foot. Fascia is a skin-like kind of surface, I guess you can call it. It's a tendon that is reaching from one side to another to try to keep these two bones in alignment. And in this situation, the fascia on the plantar side of your foot is trying to help you maintain an arch. There is a bony arch in your feet, and it needs a little bit more support than just the bones. So you have this fascia that goes there. Now, if you look between these three spots, this is generally where the fascia lies, between the first metatarsal of your first toe, or that bony bit on the first ball of the foot, and the fifth, and the calcaneus. If you look in Wikipedia, you can also see, I thought this was quite useful, a little picture of some of the areas that can cause pain. So most people come in and right at the calcaneus, this is the bottom of your foot, by the way, at the calcaneus, in the center of the calcaneus, there's an attachment site for this fascia. And that is the most common place for you to have pain with plantar fasciitis. You can have it between the metatarsals there, or up in here. There's a different percentage-wise of people that have it in different areas. But for the most part, people, when you press on the base of your heel, let me see if I can get my heel up in the camera, in there, you're going to have pain, right? It's not necessarily back here, right? This is another set. This is where the Achilles tendon is kind of coming in, and that might be more bone spurs or something else happening back there, but it is right there in that center of the heel, okay? You can have it all the way up and into the foot as well. That was a nice little foot shot, huh? So we're going to talk about, besides that, you figuring out, is that what I have? Or do I have something else that's causing me pain in the bottom of my foot? Stress fractures are likely as well if you had any sort of impact, or perhaps you've gone into running or walking much quicker than you anticipated and your body hasn't been able to quite adapt to your new level of activity. Your shoe wear is very important, right? I have talked about gait and some other times where you have to self-analyze what your foot looks like. One easy way is simply putting your foot in sand and then taking it out and looking at the footprint that you've created. You know, do you have a very flat foot? Can you see a little bit of backside to it? Or that would be the lateral portion of your foot. This is the medial, that's the lateral. Or is it totally off? So if you have a very high arch, you might only see your little toes and your heel. If you have a very flat arch, you might see quite a majority of the foot. So just kind of getting a footprint lets you know that. You could also use a mirror and you could check yourself out. So if someone was kind enough to take a photograph of you from the back side, you can see your two heels landing. Do they tend to veer in? Do they veer out? Right? So you also look at the Achilles tendon from the back side. I'll try to show you on my foot. Let's see. I got a stool in the way, don't I? All right, so that's right. If you look at my portion of my heel up to my Achilles tendon, you want to see if it's veering in or out. That might show you some of your arch. If the angle, if I drew a little line on my body, ooh, do I dare draw on my body? Yeah. and a little Achilles tendon there. Does it veer in or does it veer out? All right. Now, some of the stuff I've got down here already, as long as I've got the camera down, I'm going to show you my little games. You want to stretch that Achilles, okay? That is very often the issue, is the Achilles is tight and the soleus. The Achilles attaches to the gastrocnemius, that big chunky muscle there. The soleus lies underneath it. So in order to stretch those two, you might have heard of the common running stretch, where you place your foot back, right, and you try to get your heel close to the floor. Now, if my knee is straight, I'll be stretching the gastroc, okay? I'll be stretching the gastrocnemius or gastroc. If I bend my knee a little bit while I keep my heel down, I'll be stretching the soleus. Now, if you look at me from front on when I'm doing that, my foot wants to veer out like this. This is much more comfortable for me. I have a lot of issues there with that big toe. So me having to straighten my leg is going to be part of that. Okay? I'm going to stretch what I need to, and I need to try to realign my foot in that forward position. So watch yourself and notice if you're toeing out, because you're not going to get as much of a stretch. I'm going to be stretching the medial portion. Make sure that you're straight on. You might also be a pigeon toe person, and then you're straining the outside only. Okay, so make sure everything you do well with conscious alignment. You've got the gastroc and the soleus. Then another thing I like to do is freeze a water bottle. So I prefer the ones that are ridged, the small ones with little ridges in them. And you don't want to fill it all the way, of course, because once it freezes, the water will expand. But once it's frozen, you can put it down and you can roll your foot out on it, okay? You won't want to put weight bearing on it so that you can actually get a nice roll with a sort of convoluted surface, and it's frozen. Any ice or cryotherapy, they call it, is effective up to 20 minutes. After 20 minutes, it doesn't do you any harm. It just doesn't do you any good. Another thing to roll under might be a hard ball. This particular one is spiky. So you can get into little trigger points. You can feel exactly, you might get into the heel, okay? If it's something itis, anything itis is inflammatory. So there's a certain point where you want to stretch, yes, but you don't want to further inflame, okay? So just be respectful of your own body and how you're feeling about that. If it feels like, yes, this makes me feel better, I'm going to stretch it out. If it feels like you have irritated your plantar fascia at this point, you'll back off. This one is also a nice little product I buy for people with plantar fasciitis. It's a targeted compression, so it's much smaller and a little harder. Tennis balls are fine too. Don't feel like you have to have these special items. Tennis balls are just fine. All right, now we're going to go to little toe games. So that was stretching, well, assessment, stretching, icing, right, with a bottle, or you can put ice down there, but it's nice to stretch it out at the same time. Now we're going to deal with the stretch, the strengthening of your arch, okay? So when I point my foot, I have used the muscles that help create an arch in my foot, but not very many of us walk around with a pointed toe, right? We walk, we sit, we are like this for the most part. If we happen to be like this, it's very passive, right? When you sleep, you might hang your foot. But this, in fact, shortens the plantar fascia as you sleep, right? It does not strengthen the arch like when I point it. So some people wear a boot at night to try to keep the stretch of the plantar fasciitis when they're in the nighttime, rather than passively letting it shorten. That's one choice. It's not very easy to sleep with a boot at night, but it's an option. Certainly pointing, such as Pilates or some other things where you point, that will strengthen the arch. So we're going to use a little game, yeah, you can see my foot, where I have some cotton balls on one side, and I'm going to try to pick up the cotton balls with my foot and bring them over to another pile. Now I've made this a little bit too easy for myself. Ideally, I just get one and I drop it off, okay? Cotton balls are really easy to grab. If you notice, I'm trying to keep my foot in place while I transfer the cotton balls from one side to the other. You can make this a little more difficult by grabbing perhaps a small rock or a marble. Items that are a little bit more difficult to grasp, right? you'll notice there's a time where you just are not able to quite grasp the pen, right? So I have maybe worked on it a little bit, so I'm grasping my pen at this point. But there are some people who just cannot get those toes to curl, and that's part of the arch strength. So you're looking at arching. The reason why I put this non-slip thing is just so you can also practice grabbing. So if you didn't want to use the ankle motion that we were doing with the little cotton swab game, you can simply grab the carpet. It could be grass, it could be this little sticky pad, and kind of curl it up. It's something nice and passive to do if you ever watch TV. God forbid any of us watch TV. Another challenge with your marbles is to place it into a little cup. So I have cotton balls at the moment, and I have to set myself up for success. So I can see that that's as far as I can go. I might put it here. Now having to raise it up high enough to get it in the cup is a challenge. So when I have the option, I choose a paper cup. And that paper cup, you can simply rip off the top lip. So you can make it whatever depth you want, and it's disposable. So when you're done, you can just toss it, and you can make the next one higher and higher. This is just a plastic lid. But the idea is that you keep your foot still, your heel still, while you're transferring from one pile to another, trying to aim as high as you can to stretch and get that dropped in. All right, those are some games. Now generally, I'm going to shine you back up here. Generally, you do not want to overstrain your calf muscle when you have plantar fasciitis. So doing things like calf raises might not be the best idea right now. You can stretch for sure, so letting your heel hang off the edge of the stair, gripping with the toes, like I said, using that arch is good. But sometimes the exact culprit is the calf, which is two different muscles, right? Well, more than two, but two that I'm thinking of. So I wouldn't necessarily assign heel raises going up and down, and obviously jogging can irritate it because of that push off as well as walking. But those things you're going to have to weigh up, because sometimes they're very healthy for you overall, and you're just going to need to keep going with them. So go back to your assessment if you can. Remember, you're looking at how is your foot placed on the floor. Do you tend to roll in or out? And then using an insole to correct that. So I use super feet myself because I have a tendency for a high arch and very tight calf. You can look at things that you can tilt your foot with. They're called wedges. So inside your insole, you can do those. As I said before, there is no substitute for a nice thorough assessment with physical therapists. We are able to look exactly at your pros and cons, not just your foot, because that's just the base, right? As we travel up, you might see a weakness in the hips. That's attributing to more stress going on in that calf. So another physical therapy mode would be strengthening your hips and teaching your gluteals, glute medius maximus, to balance, so that you're not using your calves for everything, for balance and stability and push off, but you actually have strengthening the arch of your foot, you have strengthening your hips. So have some fun looking at this and try to problem solve your own plantar fasciitis. At the very least, you can strengthen your arch of your foot. Most people really need that, and that will help you in the future. And we'll do another episode with something else interesting. So see you soon.